In 2025, a crack podcast unit was sent to prison by a court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security prison to the UK underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as podcasters of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire Gaming Views.
Dan and Dan with a gaming flair, pixel dreams and worlds to share, joystick tales and button cues. Welcome to Gaming Views. Level up, we're on the go. Power ups in the audio flow. From the retro to the new reviews. It's a life of games with Gaming Views.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Gaming Views, your weekly slap in the face of all games-related news, reviews, deep dives, and most importantly, views. I'm your host for today, DH Baracus, and I'm joined by my brother from another mother, the man with the plan, the cigar-chewing, Dannibal P. Smith. However, also joining us today for an extra special event is that crazy pilot and the ever-huggable sourpuss, howling mad Joey Fitz of the Game Club Pod fame. Hello, boys. How we doing?
How are you meant to reply to that? What an introduction.
I'm trying to keep a stern face, although I can't because not with you or Joe. But I know we had this conversation last week, but this is going to be about the intros now, isn't it? I mean, I'm notoriously bad. Joey knows I'm notoriously bad for intros. And you've just come in with that blockbuster one. I mean, I might just do an episode next week where the intro is 45 minutes long. And then
I'm expecting you to just come in and not include me at all. Send me the wrong
link. There'll be an
link.
orchestra behind me playing a theme tune. Sorry, I'm very good. Thank you for that wonderful intro. And hi, Joey.
Hello. I was hoping for I ain't no playing no flight simulator.
I was going to pity the fool, but I just thought it'd be just too cultural appropriation. I just didn't want to go there.
I just did it for you, so it's all good.
I mean, the A-Team, what a show. What a show.
Never.
I'm genuinely honoured today because this is our first
You've
guest.
never watched it? Sorry, hold on.
You've never watched it?
No, sorry, I haven't.
That was a quick guest appearance.
I'll see you later, guys. Lovely to see you.
That was Joey from Game Club Pod, everyone.
Dead to you, Joey, from the Game Club.
What the...
I know
Wow.
of the A-Team. I know the parodies. I know the memes, but I've never watched it.
You just quoted Mr. T.
I know the quote. I know the meme. I know Mr. T.
I know what the next Casting View sub-series will be, TV show sub-series with you will be.
Nice.
TV shows the 80s. You better have watched Knight Rider or Airwolf.
Oh, well, I was going to do Knight Rider as a secret intro now. Now you've just kind of spoiled that one. So.
I do.
It was still secret until you said it.
Unfortunately, I wasn't alive in the 80s, so these passed me by, I'm afraid.
Our first guest.
Oh my
and
God, it's getting
and
worse.
We've had a big domestic with our first guest. Yeah, this is a momentous occasion.
Anyway, let's not do that. Let's introduce Joey properly. Joey, firstly, welcome. The first guest on the podcast. We are now at episode 11. That's quite a feat. I didn't think I'd last this long. Episode 11 and our first guest star. So thank you very much for joining us. Why don't you tell us about yourself and try not to slate the guys at GCP?
Well, first of all, thank you very much. I am a massive fan of Gaming Views. I was telling Dan just last night that I listen to it while I work and I find myself all throughout the week singing your theme song while sitting at my desk. So well done and thank you for already giving me hours of entertainment. So I'm from the Game Club podcast. We are five hosts, if you include the Biased Anime podcast. We release almost all the time, every day of the week, if you include our bonus episodes. But our main shows we talk about some video game films. We talk about things that we think our other podcast hosts will hate. We have an episode every couple of weeks that's a bit like a book club for video games. I say little, but he's about half a foot taller than me, brother Tim, and I have Two Blokes from Blight, which comes out every week, and that is us just discussing the week. I can't even begin to describe the things that we talk about on there, but some highlights are things like, and Dan is going to know what I'm going to say here, the time that Tim, in a massive hungover, pooped on a toilet seat rather than in the toilet. I don't know if that's the best advert for the thing, but it's a funny story. And
Well, you ran it in your trailer. So.
it is in our trailer. But also in the trailer, I say, "Would you listen to this, Tim?" And he says, "Yeah, I think I would." And I go, "I don't think I would." So, and then we've got Pete and Sky, who are the hosts of the Biased Anime podcast, because they are really love anime. I'm clueless when it comes to cartoons for adults. It passed me by completely. But yeah, so it's myself, my brother Tim, our co-host Alex, Pete and Sky make up the Game Club podcast.
And you guys are genuinely awesome. I mean, I'm very new to this scene, obviously, but I've listened to more of your guys' stuff than anything.
Thank you.
I even listened to. I listened to your It chapters 1 and 2. I was very cross at Tim for calling him Nick Wolfhard or whatever he kept calling him. But
He got pelters for that
slated
in the Discord. And I have to tell you, Dan, this inspiration goes both ways, because I was listening to your Mindwipe episode on casting views. There's a plug for you, Dan P. I don't know what to call you guys. I might come up with a nickname, but maybe you'll be Dan and Dan Francisco. So
Yeah, there we go.
I like that.
That's my nickname, mate. Yeah.
So I'm not a massive fan of reading, but I went out and listened to your Mindwipe, and you said that you love the works of Stephen King and his novels. And I thought, I'm going to try one, and I just searched Stephen King, and the first one that came up was Black Tower. So I've started reading Black Tower.
Amazing. Yeah. His books are just something I've read for years. We're not talking about books, but they are brilliant, and I'm really pleased you did that. You'd have to let me know what you think. But yeah, you guys are great.
There's another reason I chose that exact one, and I'll come on to it very shortly.
Okay, and
Nice.
and I want to say, I mean, it's no secret, I bloody love the Game Club pod. So I actually, I did tell Joe at the time, when I found him, I eventually started from episode 1. So I went right back to episode 1, and he called me crazy. But all your feed, all your feed is great, and honestly, we should put the link in the descriptions. But I think our two pods are quite a nice complement to each other. I think in terms of coverage, and Alex. I mean, you mentioned Tim being like half a foot bigger than you, but Tim just got the lushest of hair as well.
He does.
So.
Yeah. Both of them.
Has he got lovely hair? I've not met Tim yet.
Sorry, no, Alex. I'm sorry if I said.
Tim.
Alex has got lovely hair. I'll say Tim as well.
Yeah.
But
oh wow, okay.
Well, we're gonna. I don't know if I should say. We're gonna start doing audio and video based podcasts, inspired by another podcast I listen to. You guys.
Good. They must be great.
So you'll see their luscious hair very, very soon.
I'm excited about that. I'm excited about seeing another man's hair.
I'm waiting for the luscious hair filter on Riverside to kick in, basically.
Yeah, I'm on fire. Dan will tell you, I used to have luscious hair
you did,
up until about 9 months
Really?
ago. I had very long hair and ponytailed and everything, and then I got real and chopped it all off.
Well,
I know.
You can't. I'm sorry. I know that we're kind of going off on a tangent already, but you can't say luscious hair without talking about Josh from Talking Smack.
Josh from Talking Smack, yeah.
He got luscious hair.
Yeah, it's amazing. You just keep staring. Sorry, Josh, but
all these people with their L'Oreal products, just product placement again. I have to be careful of that. Not a sponsor, could be.
It could be a sponsor.
Right, shall we do this? Let's start with a. Traditionally, Joe, we start with fucking 11 episodes in. Traditionally, we start with a round of what have we been playing. So, Joey, what have you been playing?
Okay, so we stream every Thursday, if not more. And last night was Thursday, so I'm dating your recording here, Dan.
Nice.
And we were joined by Dan Francisco, and we played Phasmophobia. And the new update to Phasmophobia, which was really good fun. I don't know how good we were. We kept getting killed, didn't we, Dan?
Well, this is what I was going to say. You played it. I stumbled through it. I think I was like, I've got a glow stick. I've got a glow stick.
You were great.
So for the uninitiated, of which I proclaim to be and am, because I've heard of it but never seen it or played it. What's the premise?
So between 1 and 4 people go into a haunted house or building, and you have to use the equipment that you buy in the starting hub to get clues on what type of a ghost is haunting that building. So if, for example, you take your thermometer and the temperature drops below 0 in the room that the ghost is in, you can say, we've got freezing temperatures, therefore I can rule out this ghost, this ghost, this ghost, and this ghost. And once you have 3, there's only 1 ghost it can be at a time. So you go in, determine what ghost it is, and then you leave without getting rid of it.
So it's Cluedo for ghosts.
Basically, yeah.
Phantom Cluedo.
It's really good fun, actually. I think it's not the kind of game I would ever want to play solo or with people that I wasn't speaking with. I don't think that would be fun. But if you're in a chat with your friends, it's a really good, good party game, really. Nice. And then the other thing is Balatro. I'm always playing Balatro.
Who isn't? I mean, it's just I'm with you on the Balatro thing. Dan's not so convinced.
That's changed.
Oh, has it? Okay. So that. We now know what Dan's been playing as well.
Yeah, Joey said one, and I was...
So that's this week. Yeah, Thousand Balatro.
And traditionally, do you kind of not pick something that is something you want to play? Or do you always go for kind of stuff that's, do you know what, I want to play this with other people type thing?
It's 50-50. I think I play things most nights. I'll be playing games most nights, and I tend to be in our Discord in the social chat bit. And if other people are there, then I'll jump on and play something a bit more social, like Rematch or Phasmophobia. But if not, there are single-player games that I enjoy quite a lot. I might let you in on my secret of Football Manager, which I teased much earlier.
So that's the greatest RPG ever.
That's what I coined it. Yes, I'm sorry. Which is funny. If we're going to join a couple of things, because this week I listened to the Game Club Pod's Balatro episode, and in that, funnily enough, the question was asked, "What's your most addictive game?" And do you want to say? Can you remember the hours you said you put into?
I can't remember the exact hours, but when I tell people, it's something. I say something like 1.337, and they go, "What do you mean 1.37?" And if you calculate all of my time on Football Managers, 10 through to 25, it works out to 1.37 years.
Over a whole calendar year. Yeah.
That's insane, Joey.
I'll let the cat out of the bag. There was 2 Football Managers that I used to run on a laptop that would take 40 minutes to boot up. If I wanted to move from one day to the next, which in any other game, any other laptop, Xbox, however you play Football Manager, should take 10 seconds. This took 5 minutes. It was the most awful piece of machinery you've ever seen. But it was the laptop I had, and I used to buy Football Manager on day one, load it, and not turn the laptop off until the next Football Manager came out. So it was purely turned off when I had to update the laptop. So I would go to bed, I wouldn't even close the thing, I would put it under the bed so you couldn't see the light, and it would just run. It would just run and run and run. So I've put a lot of time into Football Manager. My Steam account says just over a year, but it's not actually that much.
No, because you just had it on and not actually playtime. But even if it was 50% of that, dude, that's still a phenomenal amount of time.
The Kidderminster Harriers aren't going to win the Champions League by themselves. That's all I'm going to say.
That's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, I don't know football. Dan will tell you I don't know football or do football, but it's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's not like a Balatro type thing with Dan. I'm not going to be swayed.
To be fair, you've lasted more than a lot of Football Managers actually do in your life. That is,
yeah, definitely.
Go on, Dan. Give us what have you been playing? Other than Balatro and
Joey said the other one, Rematch. So we've been playing a lot of Rematch, which is fun. And I did explain to Joey last night on the thing when I described it last week as what's that game? I've completely
Rocket
forgotten.
League.
Rocket
League, but with football. And you sort of said, but isn't Rocket League football with cars?
Rocket League
But Joey,
football
you
with
get
cars.
it, right? It
I
is.
do, yeah.
It's funny. So I've been playing a lot of Rematch, played Phasmophobia, and like all those times I screamed were totally made up. But I walked away from that having learned if you insult a ghost drawing, it will kill you. So I learnt that. And yeah, Balatro. No, I've got stuck into Balatro. So I'd bought it, hadn't really played it, hadn't given it a chance. Then I was in between games, what was it, last week? And I started playing it. And yeah, now I get it. I mean, I've always enjoyed sort of poker, but yeah, I think it's got me. Let's say that. It's got me.
What was the moment where you got it? When did it click?
I think it was actually just giving it more than like 10 minutes. I think that's what it was. I had an extended session, but it is the Jokers. It's when there's two things. One, it's a collectible kind of thing of the Jokers, but it is also, and you may have said it in your episode, it's almost that dopamine hit of, when you're getting the scoring and the malts kick in and then it gets flame. It just it taps in, doesn't it? It taps into that enjoyment factor.
It goes mad.
Yeah.
So
There
are moments when you're getting scores in the millions and you're like, have I broken
and
it?
that's it.
And it's just...
You wait till your score's so high that it replaces the numbers with E. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow. Something else.
Yeah, and I guess the other ones, I mean, we've kept skirting around this, Dan, but we are going to be doing some extra content ourselves soon, aren't we? That is going to feature some games.
Yep.
And I've been playing a couple of games that I'm hoping that we will hear our views on them, our gaming views on them very soon. So, yeah, a couple of games that I've been playing on that. So, that's me,
Yeah, I should have been doing that. But I very much wasn't doing that. Not because I had a really bad experience with the first game you selected, and many of them appeared to be cat themed. I'm not really sure
that
why.
Was a fluke.
Not even hidden cats; they were in your face.
That was
cats.
a fluke. That was honestly.
Yeah.
But
I'm not sure. You mentioned the fetish for hidden cats, and all of a sudden, all the games we got selected for were cat games.
It was listening to me. That's the algorithm for you.
Yeah, that probably was. No, my problem, and the reason I didn't, is because I created an unhealthy obsession with my new VR headset and Half-Life Alyx.
Nice.
And I've genuinely never played anything like it, and it has blown me away every step of the way. And today, I finished work and decided to put it on while the girls were chilling. I faced Jeff. And if you don't know what Jeff is, you have to go and look at what Jeff is. But I hate Jeff. That's all you need to know. But it's just a phenomenal game, and I am every single aspect of it is just built for VR, and it's mental and brilliant. And so
if you have any listeners called Jeff now, they're going to be very upset.
I'm just going to repeat, I hate Jeff a lot, like all the time. I haven't got any.
Hold on, for equal
listeners
measure,
Jeff.
I love Jeff. So
I like Jeff too. So.
There you go.
Dan loves him, Joey. I mean, you just
we
like
balance it out. Well, you've got to go for all three, right? It's yeah.
All right, fuck it. I despise Jeff. Whatever.
I can
Now,
give
Dan,
or take.
go one
Jeff.
more. Go one
I can
more.
give or take, Jeff. Jeff, you're going to be our co-host next week. So is that all? Is that what you've been playing, Dan?
I genuinely, that's all I've
Okay.
been playing. I crushed Jeff in a trash compactor. I had an option not to. I did it. I went there.
Sometimes you just got to crush Jeff in a trash compactor.
So sometimes you do. Sometimes he causes you so much grief, you just have to do that. This is going to be so weird for people who've never ever played that game, which is about 99.999999% of the population, I'd imagine.
Also, like me and Dan Francisco.
Yeah, or you two. So I can do it too. I can talk about games you've never played. Although I do fancy playing Rematch with you guys at some point, because that is the one concession
It's
I'll
not
make to
football.
football.
It's football,
and I have
but
downloaded
not football.
it.
So that's what I was saying.
Sorry, Rocket Football.
No, but what I
Rocket
was saying is
League.
it's football, but
No.
not football. It's fun. It's stupid. It's stupid fun.
Oh, well, that me all over. Sold.
But on a tangent, but I'm going to link in where you said games. You said something like games you can't play. I just want to. Should we address the news that happened yesterday about all the layoffs at Microsoft?
There'll be many games you won't be able to play.
Exactly, and I mean, I don't want to. I mean, we're 20 minutes in, so I don't want to take up too much of Joey's time on this as well. But Dan, you and I, we ironically our episode last week was the outrage and scandals, and you know we've been generally kind of praising sort of Xbox a lot or Microsoft. Now look, right, business decisions are made; they're not the only one. But yesterday's just felt like a big axe to be swung, didn't it? Like 9,000 people.
It was a bloodbath.
Yeah, a lot of games.
It was a bloodbath.
Yeah.
Although that 9,000, I think about half of them impacted Xbox Studios, and that I think the problem is, and we've known this for several years, Xbox are incredibly bad at running game studios, which becomes an inherent problem when they own pretty much all of them.
Some of the really
Do you know
good
what I mean?
ones
So
as well. Yeah.
Right? So when you know they're really bad at doing it, and then they build this catalogue of studios that they're just going to be bad in multiple different ways, it's hardly shocking when something like this happens and they shut down those things. I mean, there were some big surprises in there, right? There was
Turn 10 as
there was
well.
Perfect Dark.
Well,
Turn 10, Horizon's gone.
Yeah.
Forza, sorry, is gone. Wow. Perfect Dark. The Project Blackbird, which was supposed to be brilliant, to the point where I was reading an article today where Matt Booty had to take the controller out of the chap who runs Xbox Studios, but I had to take can't remember his name.
Spencer?
Phil. Right, I had to take the controller out of his hands because he was playing a preview build, and it was that good. But they've still decided to kind of can the studio, and that was one of the studios that's been involved in lots of other RPGs, and you know, so it's a bit of a gobsmacker. I mean, it's just surprise. Just
the fear is that it's all going to be replaced with AI, right? Because it's cheaper and easier to do. That's the fear.
Which is a horrendous thought.
I read a thing on today that they think they're already projecting that GTA 7 will be cheaper than GTA 6 because of the amount of AI content that they can put into it.
Well,
and you've only got another 20 years to wait for that.
So it'll probably be out before GTA 6.
Yeah.
That'll be the irony.
Like I said, you know, we don't know. Obviously, we're not privy to decisions. And look, they're not the only industry this happens, but it just felt like such a big move. And, you know, they announced that all the games shown at the showcase are safe. But what worries me is they didn't show Fable at that, did they? Either. No. So that was a big one.
But that's Playground Studios, and so far, according to news, they're unaffected. But that doesn't mean anything in this day and age, right? Right.
Yeah, and I obviously hope everyone affected, you know, can find a new home quickly. And we might see, you know, some startups, etc., come out of this and runs.
Fingers crossed.
I think that's a strong possibility. And if you think about things like Claire Obscure, which I'm still yet to play, they're all from, was it Ubisoft Studios? They all branched off and played. Yeah. And then the Outer Worlds was people who, I can't remember which studio they came from, but they all grouped together and made these things that were, you know, similar enough to be recognisable, but in a lot of ways a better product than what their old studio was putting out. So
agreed.
Fingers crossed we get something similar.
And they don't get swallowed up by Microsoft and spat out the other end. That's
every possibility.
The churn.
I mean,
it's all the time.
I mean, Rare is the biggest example of what you were saying, Dan, wasn't it, about not being able to run studios? I mean, what a studio they were.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at their heritage with the Nintendo. And, you know, they were just phenomenal. I mean, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie, like, you know.
The 64 was the first console I ever owned, so I've so fond memories of Rare. Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie still up there with my favourite games of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, Nuts and Bolts is probably better off not spoken about, but...
I mean, if you can get your hands on Rare Replay, if you're listening or watching this, definitely, because what
great.
A compilation that is. But yeah.
Apart from Battletoads, because it's stupidly hard.
But yeah, I just thought I thought it needed addressing because it's it just felt quite a shock yesterday. So yeah.
Yeah, and we'll do it. We'll be doing an episode on kind of game studios and development and how that whole thing hangs together and those sorts of things. So watch out for that one. And if you've been affected by it and you want to, you know, have a chat with us, we're open for that as well. Right, let's talk about the topic in question. Right, let's not do damage to Joey just yet, but let's talk about the wonderful subject of Soulslikes.
Mm-hmm.
or as I've coined it for this episode, Souls-like, because two of us here don't really as much. So, and I know, and Joey, I know I jest, but you are a big fan,
Massive
right?
fan.
You kind of like Souls games, yeah, right. So, and has that been from kind of right from the start, from kind of Demon Souls, or is this a relatively more recent
The
thing?
first Souls game I played was Dark Souls 3. And I played it. It was basically off of how good the marketing was, and I think when I saw that the bosses, and there's one in there. I don't know if you've seen or remember the Dark Souls 3 trailer. There is a boss in there called Yorm the Giant, who is 50 foot tall and has a sword as big as he is, and you're expected as a human-sized person to defeat him. And I just thought, man, that looks epic. I'm going to give it a go. And I didn't get it. Like, I bought Dark Souls 3. It cost me full price because I got it on day one. I didn't get it at all. And then I thought... I was working in a pub at the time, so I was on minimum wage.
Right.
So, full price game on day one was quite a lot of money. So I thought, I've got to get my money's worth out of this. And I kept playing it. And I got about 4 hours in, and I just thought, people rave about these games. I don't get it. And then there's a boss, and anyone who's played it, I hope will agree with me, called the Abyss Watchers in Dark Souls 3, and I'll explain why they're important later. But I fought them, and it clicked. And from that moment on, I just became obsessed, absolutely obsessed with the lore, the bosses, the music, and what it was that made a Souls-like so fun to me. And I really I want to be clear that there's two types here. There is SoulsBorne games, which are made by From Software, who make Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Dark Souls and Demon Souls. And those are top tier. I would say maybe 4 out of my favourite games are from Software, with the other one being Balatro.
Game of the year, Balatro.
Sorry, game of the century, Balatro. And then there's Souls-likes, which are games that are clearly inspired by From Software games. But the first thing I wanted to do is ask you guys, how do you categorise a Souls-like?
Hard.
Okay, that's fair.
I think there's and I'll be honest, I have dabbled on numerous occasions, and I think, is Souls 3 the one where you kind of start out in quite an open, not Elden Ring, but not open, an outdoor area as opposed to a dungeon, and you wander up, and the first guy is I think you fight a couple of lower level, and then the first kind of semi-boss type thing is in a bit of an arena thing. And he just kills you a lot.
It's a big knight. It's a really tall knight.
Yeah, a big knight.
That's
Right.
Dark Souls
Yeah, so that's how far I got with Dark Souls 3. And like you, bought it day one because I was like, oh, this looks amazing. I'm really going to... And then I died a lot. And so then I tried Dark Souls 2.
I'm sorry.
And I died even more.
Well, that's it. Well, Joey, you said that's the worst, don't you?
Dark Souls 2, I probably wouldn't even count in the same bracket as From Software games.
Right.
Because Dark Souls 2 was made... So, Dark Souls 1 was made because Demon Souls was a success. Demon Souls, when... I'm going to butcher his name now. Hidetaka Miyazaki, the director of the games, took over Demon Souls halfway through. And it was a failing game. So, From Software basically went, do what you want with it. And he revamped it completely from what it was to the SoulsBorne formula. In everything that you would see in a SoulsBorne game. And people were like, oh, this is great. So he was given more free reign. And the more games go on, the more free reign Miyazaki gets with these games. Dark Souls 2, they looked at everything in Dark Souls 1 that people liked and talked about and went, let's just do more of that. And that's not what Dark Souls is about. So there's... obviously the bosses are big in Dark Souls. Like, they are the thing that people talk about. Dark Souls 2, the base game, has 48 bosses. It's too much. Like, you can't be creative and imaginative with 48 bosses in a game that's meant to take you 30 hours.
Yeah,
it's too much. It's ridiculous. They upped the difficulty beyond what is realistic. They upped the complexity of the puzzles, which in a game with not frequent storytelling, a really sparse story, it was convoluted, it was a bit of a mess. The DLC was good, but you're not going to play the DLC if the game was bad. I cannot stand Dark Souls 2 as a game.
Going back to what you said about how to categorize it. So for me, it's a game that you need to have patience for. So it's about learning, adapting, reacting. That sounds like it's from a film. But the thing is, for me, I don't know if you can see my board. I quickly scribbled something earlier.
I can't see
so it says, I would like to like Soulslike. And I do. The thing is, I have dabbled, like Dale say, I've dabbled. So I played Bloodborne years ago. I thought that was quite good. I've played The Surge. What have I played? Still Rising, and a bit of Lies of P. But ultimately, I think what's maybe happened is been playing some Souls lights recently. So like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. That's got the Souls-like mechanics, hasn't it? Where you rest and all the enemies come.
Yeah, that's fair.
Even Claire Obscure is a little bit like that.
Yeah.
And I think that's given me a false sense of security that I could go back into it. So I was like, then I think one night didn't I play? I played the first 10 minutes of Dark Souls, and that was it. I just had enough, And that for me is. I would love to get into them, but I think my sanity at the moment wouldn't take it. Because I keep saying to you, and I've said to you, Dan, as well, on this, I really would love to love Soulslikes because of the lore, because of the whole world they're in. That is me down to a T. But I'm only going to see like 1.5% of that. So, yeah.
And that's exactly what I said to you, or I've said on the podcast. I would love to be able to play them, primarily because I think they're beautifully created games.
Yeah.
And I have played Elden Ring a bit, and I played Sekiro a bit. And what's the one where you cheese the dragon under the bridge and get the sword drop? And
that's Dark Souls.
Was that Dark Souls?
Dark Souls 1,
yeah. So I played that, did that, and then started walking. And then I think I managed to cheese another boss by throwing shit at him through a portal. Because they literally got to the point where I'm someone who'll go and try it, but I have very little patience. So then I go and try it, and I can't do it and I die on my 7th time, and I'm like, right, I'm done. How do I do this? And then I'll watch a video.
But this is really important.
I'll do it the easy way.
This is really valid, because you and I have both said before that, we're time poor. As you get older, you might be cash rich because you start working, but you become more time poor, and as things happen. Yeah. So I think I found that when it comes to gaming, I want that 45 minutes, hour to almost be valuable, and it's not to be screaming and pulling what little hair I've got left out, and look, that's not a criticism of those games. That's obviously more of me, but I think, to go completely the other side, we said earlier that I've got into Balatro now because I've given it a time. No, I'm not calling Balatro Souls-like, but I think there could be elements of it that are, but I think maybe I'm just...
That's more roguelike, isn't it? I think they're roguelike rather than Souls-like.
It's just, I don't think I'm probably giving them enough time. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
The thing is, I think everything you're saying is perfectly valid. And I'm under no illusion that Souls-like is not the most accessible genre. SoulsBorne games are not particularly accessible. But I think it's really interesting that both of you have tried Dark Souls and Bloodborne. And I said at the start that SoulsBorne is the umbrella for From Software games, but apart from the UI and maybe the checkpoint system, I don't think Bloodborne and Dark Souls are the same at all. So
no.
I think a lot of people regard Bloodborne as better than Dark Souls, and I understand that. It favours a much more aggressive style of combat.
I remember it being more approachable,
much
So the
more.
point where
And there's a heal mechanic on aggression,
Yeah.
right? For Bloodborne, so it kind of drives you towards that. The only way you're going to heal is by being aggressive and offensive rather than defensive.
you have healing items, so you can heal on the go.
Yeah.
But if you're damaged, there is a brief window where you can attack back, and it will give you back your life, your HP. The Dark Souls, you can play it without a shield, but I would never do it ever, because I just think you're going to spend the whole time getting batted about like a ping pong ball. But
Yeah.
when you go to Bloodborne, there is a shield in Bloodborne, and the item description is, "This is totally pointless." Because if you try and use it, you'll still get hurt. It's the one
Yeah.
shield in the game. And then you look at Sekiro, and Sekiro looks at another mechanic that's in Dark Souls, in Bloodborne, and that's parrying. And they make the parrying the core mechanic of Sekiro. You can beat almost every single enemy, I think without fail, without swinging your sword at them once until you've filled the parry meter of that enemy.
Yeah.
So the games are punishing to the point where they don't have a difficulty option in the menu, which I understand is a big bugbear for a lot of people. But I, from where I am, I have the time to put into them. I have the time to learn the mechanics. When I play a SoulsBorne game, if I come to a boss, I'll spend the first 5 minutes not attacking it. I'll spend it trying to avoid it because I want to learn how the boss moves.
Right.
And then you use what knowledge you've built over that 5 minutes of trying to dodge and getting hit and healing, and you use that to say, look, here's my opening. I know if they do the swing with their right hand, I can dodge to the right hand side and hit them from behind. And I think the games are really methodical like that, and they reward patience unless it's Bloodborne.
Right.
Well, sorry, I was going to ask you a question then.
Mm-hmm.
Might seem irrelevant, but do you play other genres of game then? Would you play those on like the max difficulty or insanity mode or anything?
No. I wouldn't. I play, if a game has a difficulty scale, I play it the default one that it loads up on. I don't even change it ever, because I figure a game is built and they select the default because it's the way that the developer intended you to play. So unless I'm playing something for the podcast and it needs to be a quick turnaround, which I'll put to like story mode so I can't get damaged, I'll play it on the mode that is default, because that's what I think the developers think is the best experience of the game.
Okay.
So I think SoulsBorne games are given a hard time because Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro are so revered, and you both leaned in and stroked your chin when I started to say this, that they are imitated without understanding what makes the game great. And it isn't that you have to be brilliant. I absolutely hate the fan base and this get good mentality. This get good is a scourge on Dark Souls. I think it's a disgusting phrase, because games should be for everyone, whether they're challenging or not.
But it's kind of ironic as well, right? That whole and it has primarily built up around the kind of SoulsBorne piece, and the irony comes from the fact that actually those games have an online element which is designed to help each other, right? And I know that it's now transpired into PvP, but originally there was that kind of co-op element with summoning and those sorts of things that were designed to help people get better or improve at it.
Yeah.
And then you've built this culture, this other opposite, almost antithesis of that, which is people going, "You're just not fucking good enough, so you're rubbish," which is appalling, right?
Yeah, it is.
And Joey, I know that's kind of what you're saying. One of the things I was going to say is it does feel that, you know, do I use the term gatekeeping? I don't know, but it feels like, you know, people are gatekeeping it because, you know, they're trying to say, no, it's almost like a badge of honor, isn't it? It's like we're playing it because they're supposed to be rock hard, not because, for example, you want to learn the mechanics inside and out of a boss or something. So the question I had, and Dan, sorry, I don't know if it's going to crop up later, but the only question that I've ever wanted to ask someone who was into the games like this, because Liza P have just done it. Are you against, or do you see the outrage that did happen when a difficulty level was added into a Souls-like game?
No, I don't. I think it's not for me. But I think if that allows you to go in and say, I want to try Lies of P, I'd like to be into Souls-like, but I just don't have the time to learn the way that it was played in the original release. And if a difficulty setting allows you to do that, then all power to you. Because Lies of P is awesome. Lies of P, the cutscenes, the world it's in, the fact that it's like a absolutely horrendous version of Pinocchio is fantastic. The bosses are really interesting, and I've got to say, Lies of P in its standard difficulty was too hard for me, and I've beaten every single Soulsborne apart from Demon Souls because I never owned a PlayStation 3 or 5. Lies of P was too hard, and I think I probably got about 60% of the way through. I didn't even nearly reach the end of it. So if introducing a difficulty slider is what it takes to get you into that genre, then great, because it's a great genre and I'd love more people to play it.
And that's it.
Have you? I wonder if there's a thing on the whole the setting piece as well, because Joey, have you played Wukong Black Myth?
I have.
Right, and it's you'd kind of describe that as a Souls-like. Right?
I describe it as a Souls-like with heavy leaning on hack and slash elements.
Right, so I played that, and I think I had this conversation with Dan Francisco. It's sticking, by the way. I actually really enjoyed that to the point where I think I got to like World 3, you go through ages, don't you? Yeah. Age 3, and but I got seriously stuck on the water boss at the end of the first world. Right, really tough, 2-stage. Pain in the arse. And just I read some stuff and they were like, well, actually, if you beat one of the mini bosses earlier on, that fight becomes significantly easier. The problem being the mini boss is almost as hard as that boss. But I actually went and persevered and learnt patterns and did all of that. All of those things you're kind of saying are the things you need to beat those other games. And it worked. And it was like, there was a when you do it, you're like, there's this mad moment where you're just, oh my God, that took so much effort, but I did it. And it kind of drove me on to do other stuff. And then I almost built this kind of, I'm undefeatable now, right? I can do anything. And I totally get it, but I've never felt that with kind of Dark Souls or Dark Souls. I've always felt just genuinely really frustrated by them.
I love that you showed how you felt then, because when I said the Abyss Watchers clicked for me, that was how I felt. And that was the first point I felt in Dark Souls 3, because a core thing in a Soulsborne or Souls-like game is fairly sporadic checkpoints. And if you die, you go back to the checkpoint, and everyone that you killed on the way to it, all of the enemies spawn back. And you have to make this run. And you can either methodically go through and kill everything, or you can try and juke your way through to the boss room. The Abyss Watchers was the very first boss that I fought with the class that I had built, that I couldn't just click R1 over and over and over and over and over and then do a dodge and then click R1 and R1 and R1. I had to be shielding at times, I had to be dodging, I had to be getting on the other side of the room because it introduced area of effect attacks. And when I beat it, it must have took me anywhere between 50 minutes to, an hour and a bit to beat that one boss. And I beat it and I put the controller down and I had to stop and breathe and okay, I know what's coming next. And that feeling of elation when you beat a boss is what Souls-like is. And it's really interesting, because I told you guys before we started recording, because I have to come on here and say why Soulsborne games, in my opinion, are the best games, I had to look into why that is. And it's the self-efficacy that you feel when you beat something that you thought previously was insurmountable. You say, I beat this thing, I can go on and beat everything else. Yeah. And you hit the next wall. And I think the thing with those kind of games, Black Myth Wukong included, if you want to play it to the point where you don't go checkpoint to boss and die, and checkpoint to boss and die, you can go and explore the world, kill loads of things, get your XP, level up, become as powerful as the boss, if not more powerful, and beat them. And that's an absolutely okay way to play. It still means the bosses are difficult enough that you still need to learn some attack patterns. I bet with the water, I know the one that you're talking about because I struggled with it in Black Myth as well. The one in Black Myth that I struggled with a little bit more was just after that, at the top of the cliff in the temple. And it's this enormous beast, Dan, that starts off in the first phase attacking you one-on-one, and then it starts flying around and coming at you from off the screen, and you have to have really quick reactions to dodge out of the way, and then you have an attack window of opportunity. And there will be entire playthroughs where I'm playing Black Myth, for example, or Dark Souls, where I start at one point and I spend the whole time I'm playing fighting and dying to the same boss. And then the next time I'll start and I'll end my playtime still not having beaten that boss. And then the next time I'll come on and I'll play it and I'll beat it first time. And I'm like, I never have to do that again.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And like, you know, going back to a couple of the things we've said, so I love the JRPGs, always have done. And there are moments like that where you get to the boss battle, if you're underpowered, you know, it can take you hours. But I guess Soulslike or Souls games have built their entire mechanic around that, and that feeling, that reward from, you know, I said earlier about Balatro, where you get that dopamine when you see the points. From here, it's from beating that boss. Now, the thing I was to say is go back to the gatekeeping. You know, why? Let's say we've got the three of us here. Let's say Dark Souls, they introduced 2 extra difficulty levels, right? And Joey wants to play it on, you know, I'm a hero mode. Dan, you want to play it on, you know, I'm just a regular guy do my thing.
It would be crybaby mode.
And then I was going to say,
that's what it would be.
And then I'm on a please help me mode. What's that? My mode hasn't. How's that going to impact on you two? Okay, I might not get as much out of it as say Joey has, or even yourself, because you know I'm getting that assistance. But you know, we spoke earlier about all these studios that have been hit. If that means I can give my money to the developers, the studio, if I can see the game they played, you know, it gets out to a wider audience. Why should there be outrage? Just because my game's more diluted than yours, but it's not affecting your mode, your game.
I think I'd challenge what you said, Dan. You said I wouldn't get as much from it as us two because we're playing on harder difficulties. Why wouldn't you get as much from it? You're still playing the game and beating it in the way that works for you.
Well, I think what I'm saying, I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe I'm not putting as much into it to get that reward back. You know, because we both said, like on some JRPG bosses, it is that moment where you've tried 10 times, 15 times, and then it's that 16th time where you get it. There is that thrill. If you're one shot in bosses, I'm not saying that's what it's going to be in an easy mode. Do you get that same thrill? But am I looking for that same thrill at that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that kind of brings me on to one of the reasons that I kind of fell in love with Dark Souls, even after having all this time with the Abyss Watchers that I was just getting my ass handed to me by them. It made me realise how easy I find video games these days. And it depends on what you go into video games for. If you go in for a story, then great, like all power to you. But if I'm playing a game a lot of the time, it's cost money, so I've had to put something into this. And I was finding that I was beating games. So a good example is Metal Gear Solid Rising. If you've played that, it's the one where you play as Raiden. It's the hack and slash rather than the typical Metal Gear Solid. Yep. And I was going through that and playing it for the podcast, and the whole game took me about 4 hours. And I was just like, I finished it, and the boss fight at the end was pretty memorable, but I didn't feel like it lasted with me. And I feel like with Dark Souls, SoulsBorne games, so that there's a boss, and if you've listened, I'm going to plug one of our episodes here. In Podmas last year, I did a DLC on what makes a great boss. And my best boss of all time was a boss called Ludwig from Bloodborne. He's the first boss in the DLC. And the impact that boss has left on me because of how memorable the fight was, how memorable the music was, how difficult it was, the arena it's in, the run up to it, it made me get to the point where you say, are video games art? Well, yeah, I think this is art. And I think when you talk about how art makes you feel, it's the emotion it evokes within you. And I think for me and SoulsBorne games, they evoke emotion, and it's often awe and accomplishment is what I feel when I play them. And I don't feel like I get that from other games unless it's Balatro.
I think, and I totally get what you're saying, but I think that's the frustration on these things that I feel is because there is that barrier, not just the difficulty level, because we talked a lot about that, but also the lore and the progression piece in terms of the story. And I'm not someone who needs everything spelled out for me and laid out for me. I'm not American. So
it was a good run, Dan. It was a good run.
I apologise to our cousins from across the ocean, but I'm, I did a lot of their storytelling in movies and TVs lays everything out explicitly, or you get the exposition repeatedly because it's almost like we have to drum it into someone because they don't understand it. So I don't need that, but sometimes it's really esoteric and it's really like, unless you found this little bit of note somewhere hidden in a corner behind a boss or whatever, or a boss you don't necessarily have to fight, you kind of go, I don't really get what the hell's going on. I mean, Elden Ring is a prime example. Haven't got a clue.
Okay.
The Tarnished. Okay. What else? That's as much as I know, because as much as I've found, I don't really understand it. And so I'm happy to look at Wikipedia and go, oh, okay, I understand it now. But it almost feels like it's intentionally putting a wall in front of people who don't want to dive in. And therefore you're not even getting the opportunity to dive in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and it's something I really agree with. So nightreign, which I haven't spoken about, is the newest from Soft. And I'll be honest, I'm playing it and I'm in exactly the same position you are. I understand there's these things called Nightfarers and they've got to go and kill bosses, but I don't know why. They've got 3 nights to do it, but I don't know why. I don't know what happens if they just don't do it.
But is that because it's a multiplayer game and you're playing it with friends, rather than it being a single player?
It's the same with any of the single player experiences. Okay. What I'd say is, there is a YouTube channel called VatiVidya who does all that heavy lifting for you. So you can do it, or you can go and watch his videos and he'll explain what small part you are in the very big world that's been created.
Right.
And for some people, they go, why don't you just watch the whole thing on Twitch? Why don't you watch someone play through it? Which is a fair comment, but the parts of the game that I love and the parts of the game that I really get invested in are the bits that I'm doing. So have either of you played The Witcher 3?
Yeah.
Love it.
I didn't get it.
Several times.
Didn't get it.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't get it is because there was way too much reading involved.
Oh, yeah, you don't like a talkie game.
I hate talkie games. And if I don't want to play... I want to play a game. I don't want to watch a TV show when I'm playing games. It's like... what Metal Gear Solid was it that had an hour-and-a-half long cutscene with a save point in the middle?
Wasn't it? Was it?
Not all of them.
Well, yeah, all of them. But wasn't it 4?
4.
The latest one.
4 and 5, maybe.
Metal Gear Solid Death Stranding.
Yeah, well, 5 was the opening. I've said to you, Joe, the amount of time, the opening. I want to keep playing that game, but I've got to get through that opening.
But I feel like video games in media have this really unique sense of being the one that you control. So I want to control it. And if I want to learn more about why I'm controlling it, I don't mind having a YouTube video on the side just explaining that to me while I'm running from point A to point B. I think... I'm not the smartest man in the world. If I had to decipher what bloodborne lore was, I would be still trying to understand where Yharnam is meant to be, despite all of their very thick Yorkshire accents. But because I have watched those videos, I feel like I have a much better understanding of the world I'm in. And when I get to a boss, so the second boss you get to in Bloodborne is a hunter called Father Gascoigne.
Yeah.
And you could... I know you both had dabbled with Bloodborne. Did you get to Gascoigne?
I think I got past him, and there's a bit where you go up a ladder and fight a boss on top of a roof, and I think that's where I ended up giving up because I was just like, I can't do this. I can't do this.
So the bosses in Bloodborne, I learned through VatiVidya, are split between beasts, which are people who have been corrupted by the hunt and the night and all of the things that it brings, and the hunters, which are humanoid enemies. So these beasts are big, you get underneath them, and there's a From Software rule that if there's a boss you can't beat, get behind it and smack it in the ass till it dies. If it's a hunter, it's quick, and it can do the same thing to you that you can do to it, so it's a much more level playing field. When I talk about Ludwig, one of the reasons I loved that boss fight is there's two phases, and they're both difficult, but the first one is a beast, and the second one, he becomes very much more human. And the reason for that, and that's the one boss that I didn't have to watch a video on why he is because he started off as a human, and through all of the killing and the bloodlust and the madness, he deformed into one of these beasts, and that was made apparent through the run-up to him, and it's the environmental storytelling. Now, if you're willing to accept that, and that you're not going to be told the story, they have the best stories out of any video game.
I don't think I doubt that. I just think there's a happy medium, and there's an example, right? So your example of the elongated cutscenes with save points, right? No one needs that shit. But if the comparative is that, and then the one in Elden Ring that I could never get my head around, right? So you go to the little burnt out chapel at the beginning, and you speak to the guy, and then at some point you're in the middle of a woods, and there's a guy whistling at you from the top of a thing, right? And you manage to he's a werewolf or something. Okay. And then you have a conversation with him, and if you have the right conversation, you go back to the little chapel, and he's there, and I'm like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why this guy. There was nothing to tell. There was no environment. Well, there may have been. I missed it. Like environmental storytelling to go. What? Why? What happened?
But if you enjoy, and this is, earlier I said that these Souls-like games, it's the mechanic that probably draws you in. Do you necessarily need to follow the story if you're enjoying a game? Because I've said a number of times that, Mrs. Casting Views, she doesn't do gaming, but she's in the room when I play a game. Now, sometimes I'll be playing a game and I'll get so into it. She knows more about what's going on in the story or the lore than I do. Like Mass Effect, do you know what? I'm going to let you a secret. It's one of my favourite games, right? But
no way, dude.
Yeah, spoiler there. But the thing is, right, sometimes I'm playing it and she's like, she knows more about the lore than I do because she's paying more attention to the story because I'm then getting drawn into the game itself. So I guess what I'm saying is, and look, right, if you take the story out of Mass Effect, it's not necessarily a great game. We go back to what you're saying about The Witcher being a talkie game, because there's stories, there's building, etc. But I guess what I'm saying is if the mechanic of the boss battles is that good, do you really suffer from, if you don't expose yourself to all the lore, you can still enjoy it just as much as what I'm saying?
I agree completely, and I think the answer is yes, but I also agree with Dan H's point that if this is your entry to that genre, it's not the normal way of telling a story, or it's not the normal way of delivering a video game, so it seems really alien to you. So that's why I love games like Star Wars. You mentioned it earlier, Fallen Order.
Yeah,
that's great because it's a Souls-like. I would say that's a really faithful Souls-like because if you slapped a medieval fantasy skin on it, you'd probably be playing a Dark Souls with some extra cutscenes. But because you already understand the lore of Star Wars, you go in there and you don't start at zero. You're not at a base level. You have an elevated knowledge of the world that you're in and why things are happening. So I go into Dark Souls 2, which I wouldn't go into again, but did, and Dark Souls 3 with an understanding of why the world is like it is, and I'm not starting at zero. So you didn't get to it because you didn't beat the the boss at the start, Dan.
Yeah.
But for Dark Souls 1, the first thing you do is you go into a boss fight, and it's with this enormous demon, and you have a broken sword, so it's not even a proper weapon. And the first thing you have to do is run away from it. You don't have to fight it. The first thing you do is run away from it. And that's not said to you, but there's an open door at the back of the room. So if you're running away from this boss long enough, you're going to see this open door. And then you spend the whole time in the tutorial zone, killing enemies, upgrading your equipment, leveling up, and you go to the boss and it teaches you a special way to knock off half its health just by jumping from the balcony above and doing a drop attack. And I think that method of instruction and storytelling to me is far more impactful because I've done it and it feels like my choice, despite it being very much scripted by the developers. That to me feels much more like an organic game that I am in control of, rather than following a path that is predetermined for me by developers.
Which I get. I just, if I think back to some of the games that I've really enjoyed, where they haven't been explicit in either the story or the mechanic or what you need to do. And I'm talking about things like, we've talked about it before, like Half-Life or BioShock. Yes, all right, they're shooters, so the mechanic is fairly obvious. But some of the puzzle elements and some of the things you do, and some of the puzzle elements have never appeared in video games up until that point, like like some of the more physics-based puzzles and things like that you wouldn't have come across. I enjoyed finding out what that was, or I enjoyed exploring the world to the point where I understood why what had happened, without it becoming a frustrating exercise in, have I missed something that would have explained what that thing is? And I guess I guess what I'm saying is, I guess it's more of a personal thing about how you enjoy joining dots. So it's not a right or wrong thing, and I'm not trying to say that. I think, and for mechanics, trying to work out what mechanics, if you look at something like Breath of the Wild or something like that, none of it's explicit, and you can almost go about it your own path. You can go and kill Ganon in 5 minutes if you're a psychopath, right? Or a speedrunner. But you could do that, but the world is open enough and the mechanics allow you to find your own way without it becoming a frustrating or very much developer driven experience. Yeah. But I've just never managed to get around the whole thing with, and maybe for me it is that difficulty spike. Maybe that's the thing that stops me.
I think that it sounds like a hurdle. It doesn't sound like a brick wall for you. So Breath of the Wild is an excellent example of this. I think it goes back to that knowledge starting level. I'm guessing you both have played or seen the Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you played Breath of the Wild for the first time, and you left the cave and you explored, it didn't tell you which way to go, which is very Souls-like. The way it teaches you the way to go is you go one way and you get your ass kicked. And then you go another way and you go, well, this way was slightly easier than that way. And that's what Dark Souls is based on. So it's an open world game that encourages you to go one way or the other with the difficulty level. The reason I wanted to link it back to Ocarina of Time is, and the knowledge-based thing, is, do you remember the point where you first found the Temple of Time in Breath of the Wild and it was dilapidated and the roof had fallen in, and you realised where you were centuries later? That moment there where you went, oh my god, this is amazing. That's how Dark Souls makes you feel if you understand a little bit about the story. And I think the thing that Dark Souls 3, this is one of the things I wished I had played Dark Souls 1 first. Dark Souls 3 is set in the same location as Dark Souls 1, but it's done in a way that the world has changed a lot. So there's a really famous setting in Dark Souls 3 called Anor Londo, and it's like this. You go from this swamp, it's called the Undead Swamp. You go through this horrible town that's full of zombies and hollowed people that are trying to kill you. And you beat this, I can't remember what the area is called, but it's deliberately put there to frustrate and confuse you. Seth's Palace, I think it's called. And you beat the boss of that, and then this really strange cutscene where these like humanoid bat creatures pick you up and they take you over a big wall. and it's this white shining city where the sunlight is behind it. Everything is glorious white. It looks like beautiful. It looks like Barcelona's unfinished chapel if it was finished.
Right.
And in Dark Souls 3, there's a point where you go up an elevator from this horrible thing, and you're in Anor Londo, and you see it again, but it's all cracked. It's all grey. It's aged. And
Right.
the familiarity that you would have felt if I hadn't played Dark Souls 3 first.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen people playing it since and watched streamers where they're just stopped and their jaw dropped. And I think that's because Anor Londo is so synonymous with Dark Souls 1, and Dark Souls 1 it means so much to so many people. When I was looking and doing my research, I searched in YouTube Dark Souls 1 and then just left it, and there was hundreds of videos. Dark Souls 1 saved my life. Dark Souls 1 did this. Dark Souls 1 did this. And the effect that it has on people and the emotion that it evokes because of that self-efficacy that I was talking about earlier is unlike any game that I've ever seen before.
Do you know that's this really interesting point, Joe? Because there was a question here that I stripped out because it kind of almost inferred that was there a negative impact on mental health as a result of playing these games because of the levels of frustration and repetitiveness and stuff. And actually, what you're inferring from what you've seen and your own experiences is actually it's the opposite.
I agree. And I think that, once again, this isn't the same for everyone, but for me, the feeling of accomplishment I get... Think about the last thing you did that it felt like you were hitting a brick wall over and over and over again. And whether that's in a video game or in real life, and then you managed to get to a point where you smashed through that brick wall and it was a positive outcome on the other side. That's the feeling that you get every single time you beat a Dark Souls boss. And I just think that that's something that you don't get very often in video games to the degree that you get them in Dark Souls. But yeah, it's a really interesting one. And I'd urge you to look up, if you search what is a Soulslike in YouTube, because I really wanted to define this for you guys, and I haven't managed to do that. You'll get people just like saying how much these games mean to them and how much they've saved their life and how it gives them a feeling that they can get through the next thing and they can get through the next thing and they can finish what they want to finish and stuff like that. It's really, really interesting.
But
Do you think that's resilience? It's building resilience for them.
Potentially. I don't know if I'd want to say it like that, because it sounds like if you don't do it, that you're not resilient. And I don't think that's the case. I think that these games, once again, they are for some people and not for others. Video games are for everyone.
Do we not just we've said a number of times, we love this hobby, we love this pastime because of the stories, the adventures, the people, and the experiences. So for example, I'm going to bring it up again. Mass Effect, I will play that every year. I love the characters. I love the storylines. There's things in that you can relate to. So whatever it is, whether it's Stardew Valley or a Soulslike, there's going to be something. I mean, look, these indie games that we're seeing, they're putting far heavier narratives into these games. I mean, what became of Edith Finch, for example? I mean, look at the story they pack into that, right? So, we gravitate and we attach ourselves to something that give ourselves that meaning, don't we? And it could be that people maybe have had issues with succeeding in the past or something. So games like that is a personal battle. So, again, going to say it, and it might sound trite, but this is what makes this pastime beautiful, right? Is that we have got these different things. I mean, look, we're sitting here sort of an hour, 10 minutes in talking about Soulslikes, Dan, with something that we said. Who'd
have thunk it, right?
But, it's a brilliant conversation, and all I've been thinking about throughout is I really want to get Black Myth Wukong now, even though I know. But this is the thing. It's that appeal. It's that attraction to something that about wanting to overcome, right?
I agree. I think the other thing, Dan, sorry, just as a very slight thing on Black Myth Wukong, Dark Souls and Souls-like games typically start with you as an absolute zero in a basement somewhere being handed the very smallest of light lines. A little bit like Oblivion. You know where you're in the prison at Oblivion?
Yeah.
That's often what the start of Dark Souls games are like. Black Myth Wukong might have one of the best introductions to a video game I've ever seen. And you start off as a god. It's absolutely incredible.
It is so good.
I think
I really enjoyed that.
That's enough, I think. I mean, if the price is right, of course. But that is enough to justify playing the game. And that should, for a lot of people, be enough reason to get hooked in on it. To say, look, I'll get to that point again.
Okay.
Yeah, it was an interesting one because I'd seen it through its development stages and seen those guys building that, and I was really interested in the work they were doing and how beautiful it looked. And I've always, I said to Dan before, I've always loved Journey to the West and that story. And as a kid growing up with Monkey, you know, that whole, you know, that for me was the intro to this was going to be Born from an Egg on a Mountaintop, but I couldn't find one that was good enough to put on it. So look up if you
I was going to say, Joey didn't know, hasn't watched the A-Team, so I'm not sure.
That's fine.
I know what you're talking about now.
I'm not sure he's watched Monkey. He was Monkey and Piccolo. But anyway, that. So I've always loved that. And what was interesting when you were talking about that boss at the temple, because I defeated that boss and went on to that boss, but because of that feeling of euphoria, I absolutely, probably in the second time, I died the first time, slapped him to the point where I then went and rang the 3 temple bells because I wanted to go back and fight another version of him and beat that one as well. And that was, you know, then you come back to that going, my God, I'm really good at this game. But I've never been able to find that element. And I'll be honest with Elden Ring, I watched a YouTube video of a guy who went, look, there is quite an easy way to OP and kind of go and overpower and go and get certain things that will allow you to, certainly in the first area, beat quite a number of the mini bosses. And so I did that, and I went around, and I can't remember any in the first area, 5 or 6, something like that, in the first mini bosses in the first area.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I'll come on to this point in just a minute, but yeah, sorry, so 5 or 6.
Yeah, so I think I did most of them except for the guy on horseback because I did the others and went, I'm brilliant now, I'm so cool. Went up to him, kicked my ass, and I was just like, oh man, what am I doing wrong? But then it was the pattern recognition and the, and then I got to another stage which was some mines a bit later on. And started going through there, you know, at what I thought was quite a good level, and realised how ill-equipped I was to do that, and died and went, I've given up.
But the thing is, I think what I was saying about the direction of travel that Dark Souls games send you on, if you aren't good enough, if you're not a high enough level, if you've not learned the mechanics, you're going to get slapped. Go and try this one instead, where the enemies are a lower level, and you can beat them and level up. Elden Ring plays it slightly similarly, but slightly different, because Dark Souls it's an open world game in quote marks.
Yeah.
It's an open world, but a lot of the world is like quite narrow. So there's branching pathways, a lot of corridors, but Elden Ring isn't that. Elden Ring is an expanse. And I think, so Dan, if you don't know the boss that, Dan Francisco, if you don't know the name of the boss that Dan H is talking about, it's the Draconic Tree Sentinel. And
that's the guy.
You come out of the tutorial level, where the boss in the tutorial level is called the Soldier of Godric, and it's a soldier. It's nothing special. Most people slap it straight away. And you see this Draconic Tree Sentinel, and your brain goes, well, I've done that, so I've got to do this next guy. And he comes up and he'll one-shot you every single time. He'll kill you instantly.
Yeah.
And the point in that is, well, maybe I don't go and fight him. Maybe I go and explore the beach and I go and fight the enemies there. And there's enemies down there that are more equipped to the level that you are. So the start of Elden Ring isn't about go in this direction. It's that, like, it's an open world. Go and explore the world and go and find it at your pace. And I think that is a really difficult thing to do when you have a fan base who kind of have this expectation of the way a game should play and the direction of travel that you should be taking in that game before you've even started.
But that's it. But like Dan said earlier, I think we are in a world, and it's not just recent, it's been over the years, but we are handheld a lot. I mean, you know, when you start a game now, you're waiting for those pop-ups. Move the stick left to move left. Move the stick right to go right.
Yeah.
You know, this is it. It's all given to you on a play. I mean, I guess I don't know if it was because, Dan, back in the day, we used to get manuals and everything was in there, and now we don't. So they feel they have to tell you everything.
The exposition is exponential, isn't it, in a lot of places. I was just thinking on this though, like what you guys were saying about, and I'm really struggling now because I've talked at length to you, Dan, when we've been on dog walks and stuff, but also on the podcast in the early days about No Rest for the Wicked.
Oh yeah.
Right, which is the Moon Studios ARPG that is heavily Souls inspired, like heavily. You start off as a guy with a stick, right, in rags. All of the enemies are completely overpowered against you, and you have to gradually work your way up. And every time you die, you respawn at a whisper, and everything respawns. And all of the bosses you have to learn. All of the enemies you have to learn their attack patterns. Like even the grunts, because they can kill you in one hit or two. And I freaking love that game. Like, I have gone through that game to it's in early access, so there's the second story plot has been released, and I've played through that, and there's only one boss right at the very end that I haven't done. But I've put 120, 130 hours into that game, like to get to that point. But even those guys at Moon Studios recognized that it was inaccessible for some people who weren't prepared to do that. And I'm surprised I did it, because I genuinely, there's a moment of realization of going, hang on a minute, I do like this stuff because I've been doing it, just not in Dark Souls.
Does it go back to...
But they've put in world tiers now. So they've put in world tiers where you can essentially go, well, if I want an easy ride, I'll do the easy tier. And if I want a normal one, there's this one. And if I want the super hard one, I'll go to this one. And I wonder if there is some of that accessibility that could be introduced. And I know you're not adverse to it, Joey, but I wonder if there is some of that, something similar that might help introduce a new...
Well, I wanted to jump in before... Sorry, Joey, before you jump in. But it's something that Joey did say to your question, to your point there, Dan, because that's a really, really great one about No Rest for the Wicked. Is it because, though, like Joey, you're saying about you're going into like Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, knowing the lore and a game more approachable? Like, for example, I talked earlier about playing some games that maybe lull you into a full sense of security. It was on Game Pass a while ago. I just need to look it up. Another Crab's Treasure. Have you seen that or played that? Yeah. That looks like a Nickelodeon cartoon, but it's a Soulslike, right? So is it because you're not playing Dark Souls and it's not starting in this dark dungeon, or do you know what I mean? It's a more approachable. Sorry, is it approachable? Yeah, the game's more approachable from the outset.
I'd say it's almost as if not darker. Like you literally start in a shipwreck on a beach.
I've seen you play it. I mean,
in
about
the
the look, it's a lot shinier.
It's a lot more aesthetically pleasing than the start of Dark Souls games.
I mean, it looks like a moving painting. I mean, it's beautiful in terms of how they put it together. But I don't know, because there were points of massive frustration when I first started. Like, and when they introduced the second story element, they wiped the realm. So you literally had to start from scratch again. But because I'd known and learned and understood, it was a bit like Prestige in Call of Duty. Because I knew it, and I knew the maps, and I knew where to shoot, and it was much easier for me to go through and do it, which was weird, because I remember going and doing stuff. Like, there's a guy at the top of a tower, you jump over a bridge, he's like one of the first, he's not a boss, but he's like one of the first higher level characters with a massive axe that can take you out in one hit. But because I knew that, and I knew I was completely underpowered, I literally jumped over, knew the moves to get behind him, backstab him, turn around the front, slap him. And first time. Whereas before, I tried about 20 or 30 times in the previous one and died every time. But after the realm wipe, and they hadn't changed the difficulty of these things. It's a bit of a light bulb moment. It goes, well, I did do actually the things everything that Joey's talked about in talking about how great Dark Souls is. I'd done it just in another game. And I do wonder, you're right, Dan, I do wonder if it is because I wasn't walking into it with the expectation that it would be ultra hard, even though I kind of knew it was supposed, because, you know, all of the not advertising, but the articles and stuff I'd read had said, like, oh, it's a Souls-like, you know, there's spawn points, there's this and that. I'd known that, but I think there is such a noise around SoulsBorne games being super hard.
I think so, because
maybe that's it.
The Surge, I mentioned the Surge earlier, and Joe, we talked about it the other night. Now, I'm not going to necessarily say I got far into it, but I love playing that. But that was rock hard, that game. You know, but again, it wasn't Dark Souls, or it wasn't, you know, one of those games. And I wonder if there is, because we've said earlier about the gatekeeping and the community, or sorry, a minority of the community around it, has it built up this, Dark Souls like can't go near it? Do you know what I mean?
I really hate to tell you guys, but you like Souls-likes. That's how it is. You like them, and I think you hit
Dan.
the nail on the head.
He's turned into the trial of Dan and Dan.
The reputation that comes with From Software games has absolutely done that to you. And I think if you and I'm not saying you could or should, but if you went into them with a completely forget about the immense difficulty that you know will come, but is surmountable, you'd have a great time with it. I really think you would. And sorry, Dan.
No, I mean,
Francisco.
all I was going to say is, you know, Dan, these people, they can talk about the Soulslike, but we had driver tutorial, didn't we? So that's what I was
Jesus
say.
Christ! Don't even get me started on that, Polcaro.
Dan, like you, I completed the driver tutorial.
Screw you both, man. Screw you both.
I do really want to quickly say, I know you joked last week, Dan H, when Dan Francisco said, "What are you playing?" and you said Nightreign, and his jaw, you could hear the noise when his jaw hit the floor.
It's about the 5 minutes of silence that had to be edited out of there. That's what it was.
I don't think Nightreign is a Souls-like game, and I think that's a strange thing to say, being set in the Elden Ring world and with a lot of Elden Ring mechanics and literally taking bosses from Elden Ring and Dark Souls. But it's not a Souls-like game because, one, there is a method to get back up when you get knocked down, and it's your teammates doing it. Two, I actually think it's more of a roguelike game because the way you do it is you defeat bosses and you get random loot drops, and you use those random loot drops to defeat the next boss who gives you random loot drops, and every single playthrough is different. But it's probably more akin to a roguelike version of Fortnite, which I don't feel great in saying because it's not my favourite thing. But there is, it funnels you using a blue circle of fire that you lose health if you're outside of that circle to a certain area where you have to come up across something that's a higher level, which is the people that get to that circle. I also think, I don't know how much you like playing multiplayer over solo. If you prefer solo, I would give the other Soulsborne games a go. But if you like multiplayer, 3-player Nightreign is great fun. It's really good fun. Multiplayer in the other Soulsborne games, as Dan H said earlier, is a summon sign outside of the boss room. They go, this is the bit that's really hard, so you might want someone to come and help you. And then when the boss is defeated, that summon goes away and you never see them again. Unless you've modded Elden Ring, as some people did, to play the whole game together, but it's not how it's intended. Whereas Nightreign is a multiplayer experience, and what works really well for one person won't work well for another person.
Well, I saw a video this week of this girl who was comparing playing Elden Ring after Elden Ring after having played Nightreign, and it was so funny. It was done as a you know, a spoof,
like a therapy session, wasn't it?
Yeah, but like, you know, there's no fall damage in Nightreign. Then you see her leaping off this cliff in Elden Ring and just, you know, splatting.
Yeah, I wind Tim and Alex up by saying that Nightreign is closer to Balatro than it is Elden Ring. And I stand by that.
Borderlands, was it?
Borderlands. Yeah.
Loot drops.
Yeah, I don't know if I really want to compare anything to Borderlands. But,
Let's not go there. That's another episode.
There's another episode in there. I think it's we'll convince you, Joey, that you should play Borderlands.
Yeah,
No, another episode.
Not going to happen.
I played the first one
and
enjoyed it, but I'm not mad on the CEO's practices. So it's less about the game, more about the man himself. But that's
fair.
I've got as close to an hour and a half as I think I can in convincing you. But you've said it yourself. You both like Soulslikes.
I do like Soulslikes. I just want to be good at them.
They're just different. I think that's the problem, right? I think it's the patience that it takes for me to be able to actually get into it. And if I find a game I like and the mechanic is right and I know there's something in it for me and the storytelling clicks as well, which I think is the other thing that absolutely within, in No Rest for the Wicked, it's not in your face, but it is there. And it's not explicit, but it is well told and thought through. And that for me is the thing that sometimes makes me frustrated at. Particularly Elden Ring's a prime example of that, because I don't think I got far enough into the others to even care about the story. But Elden Ring I really wanted to, and then when I just don't get it. But you're right. Look,
I was going to say, like Claire Obscure as well. I know it's not as intense, but I took the time. I wanted to play that, so I learnt the moves of the enemies, and I learnt how to parry them, and I learnt how to dodge at the right time, and how to defeat them, because I wanted to see that game through.
Well, look, we have been talking for nearly an hour and a half, and I do appreciate, Joey, that is an epic session. Look, we had a whole thing skit planned around the trial of Joey, but the conversation was just so fascinating and genuinely drawn into it. You said that we kind of both let in. That wasn't because of disbelief. That was genuine interest in terms of, and body language will tell you that's what people do. They're like, oh, I want to know more about this. So, really fascinating insight into someone who loves those games. And potentially, I'm not going to say factually, but potentially convinced us that maybe we do like Soulslikes.
Maybe
not SoulsBorne.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's fair, right? But look, let's give you. I want to give you another opportunity to talk about your wonderful other podcast, which is so prolific, dude. Like, I can't believe how much content you guys put out. But before we wrap, please take it away and just give another shout out to GCP, because they're amazing.
Thank you. It really helps having 5 hosts who all edit and do their own thing. But search Gaming Club Pod. I was really going to say search Gaming Views then. Search.
You can do that.
Search that, yeah.
Search for Game Club Pod in all of your podcast providers. We should appear, and if we don't, then they're not very good, and you should use someone else. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, Good Pods, and all of the others. And if you like hearing about Tim pooing on toilet seats and waking up not knowing where he was the night before, Two Blokes from Blighty. If you want to hear video games, then mainline Game Club Pod. It's all good fun. We welcome everyone, and join our Discord where everyone's welcome to get in the conversation on video games. We really enjoy that kind of stuff.
And they are genuinely brilliant. I've loved every episode I've listened to of the stuff you guys do. The one I haven't hooked onto yet is the anime one, but I'm not a massive fan of cartoons. So I love cartoons, just not anime cartoons. That's fine.
I was going to show you guys. I accidentally, and this will come out before Two Blokes this week. I accidentally bought a graphic novel for the first time ever. And it's a Bloodborne graphic novel.
Oh, well, there you go.
Okay. You should. I won't talk about my collection of graphic novels, of which is immense. Hundreds of them. Anyway, right, with that, we will wrap up. We will be back next week for another episode of Gaming Views. In the meantime, please like and subscribe on our YouTube channel and join us on where all good podcasts are available alongside the GCP boys, and we'll be doing more in future. Dan, anything from you?
No, I was just going to say, if you're listening to the audio only, do hop over to the YouTube where you can see the lovely Dan, the lovely Joey, and you can also get to see me. I was just going to say hi. I'll say if you do a few shout outs as well. I'm going to say shout out Tim and Alex, because obviously they're not here, but we have got plans. And Trevor, James and Danny. I will shout those out.
Hello, Trevor, James and Danny. And keep listening. And in the meantime, stay safe, enjoy your hobby, and we will see you next week.